Hey everyone, Isabelle Fox here, and today we're talking about how to pick the right place to work when you're just starting out. I've had a couple of people ask me about this on the channel lately, so I thought I would just address it in one video here. It's really difficult to find practical and resourceful information in the sex industry, especially when you're just starting out. You can definitely find information regarding counseling, there's heaps of stuff about health and even on legal practices. But actual information about how the job works, how to get started, what it's like, that's nearly impossible to find, which is exactly why I started this channel. I began working in the sex industry when I was 18, and I knew nothing about it other than what I had seen on TV and read in books, which is mostly inaccurate anyway, though fun to hear about. I had to learn everything by trial and error, so this video is for anyone who is just beginning in the industry and wants to know how they can go about picking the best place to start working. If you're totally new to this, you are going to be nervous, which is normal and fine, it will pass. I'm going to tell you now though that nothing will really prepare you for your first job other than actually doing your first job. There is nothing quite like being alone with a client in a room and performing a service. However, arming yourself with knowledge is the best thing you can do to ease yourself into it and to make taking that first step feel as comfortable as possible. I'm going to share with you exactly what I did when I was 18 and knew nobody and nothing about the sex industry yet wanted to start working. 1. Start with brothels/parlors. If you're in a place in the world where you cannot access a safe and legal brothel, then this might not be an option for you. The advice I'm going to give you in this video can still be applied to agency work. However, I always recommend starting at a brothel if you have the option, and here is exactly why. There is very low commitment to get started. You can literally walk in the door with a medical certificate and an outfit and begin straight away. It doesn't cost you anything, you don't need to get photos taken or pay to travel to multiple locations. So you can really give this a try and see if it's for you before having to make any significant kind of investment. And if it isn't for you, you can leave with no problem. When you're at a brothel, you will be on site with other workers, which will give you a great opportunity to learn from other people, get support and advice from other workers, and also just generally be in an environment with people who are doing the same thing as you so you don't feel so alone. Escorting can be a really lonely profession. There will also be on-site staff like the hosts and sometimes even security, which will act as a point of safety for you. Not all brothels have actual on-site security, however, there will always be brothel staff on the premises running the place who are responsible for your safety. Some agencies provide you with drivers to take you to and from bookings, however, not all do. So sometimes the only point of security you have is a text or a phone call to the administrative person who is handling your shift at the time, and that's it. Lastly, when you work at a brothel, you meet with lots of clients and are able to gain experience more quickly and easily. I've spoken about this a number of times. Even if all the clients you meet don't actually book you, the opportunity that you get to speak with them and intro them will be of great value to you. Learning how to interact and communicate with clients is a really important skill that will make you better at your job. You'll also get to see what other girls are like and how they communicate with their clients. So you'll have the opportunity to ask them about what they do with their clients when they're alone, and you can see which girls get booked more and why. When you're working at an agency, however, you will really only have contact with the clients you are sent to meet, which will generally be far fewer than the number of people walking in the door at a brothel. Some agencies work where they have all the workers who are on shift waiting at one location to go to jobs. However, many have you sitting at home waiting to go to a job from there. So you'll have far less interaction and opportunity to learn from others when you're at an agency versus if you're at a brothel. If you decide to begin work straight away into the private independent sector, you'll have literally zero communication with other people outside of your clients and outside of the people who you source to meet with yourself. 2. Make contact with multiple options, and I suggest at least contacting 3. All you need to do to find potential workplaces in your area is to type in brothel or escort agency in the area that you want to work in Google. So when I first started working, I looked for brothels in Melbourne. Obviously, at first, you will go to these places' websites. However, what you need to know is that most information on agency and brothel websites are incredibly generic and vague. Most places will have a recruitment page that will tell you about working with them, but again, this will be vague and probably totally inaccurate information as well. Almost every agency and brothel website I have ever seen claims to have high-end workers and high-end clientele, when actually most just want as many workers and as many clients as they can get in the door. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's simply just not an accurate reflection of what it's really like to be there. That's why you need to make direct contact with the workplace and actually speak to a human. I recommend getting on the phone and asking to speak with whoever is in charge. They'll most likely have the most experience and the best understanding of their workplace. Brothels and agencies and the sex industry in general are known for having high turnover even in their administrative staff, so you don't want to be speaking with somebody who is just as new to the industry as you are. Once you do get this person on the phone, the person in charge, explain to them that you are new to this, that you're new to the industry, and that you would like to come in and speak with them in person, as well as see the location in person. The response should be a resounding yes. And a quality workplace with quality staff should be encouraging you to come in and see what they are all about. Remember that most behavior comes from the top. So if the staff are pushy, unreasonable, and disrespectful, it's probably because the management and owners are too, and that is not the sort of behavior, and that is the sort of behavior you'll get throughout the entire workplace, so you want to avoid that from the start. 3, see what it's all about in person. Once you have spoken to multiple places over the phone, you want to actually go in and meet the people that you will potentially be working with in person. If it's a brothel, you want to be taking a look around at the place you will possibly be working at in person as well. Again, go to multiple places. Don't just go to one location who sounded great over the phone. You've never done this before. You have no idea the range of options that are available to you. You might be missing out on a really great opportunity with a workplace that's a really good fit for you because you settled with the first place you saw that seemed fine. If you're looking at brothels, ask to take a look around the whole premises. Have a look in the working rooms where you'll be spending time with clients. Have a look in the lockers where you keep your things. Does it feel clean and safe? Is there a safe place for you to keep your things between bookings? Unfortunately, having clothes and money stolen is a reality in some brothels from the other workers, so you want to know that there is somewhere that you can safely keep your stuff, preferably something that locks up and other people can't get into. I then recommend asking to speak with other girls who are already working at this brothel or agency. Now, due to high turnover and concern of privacy, not all workers will be comfortable or open to speaking to somebody that they don't know. So if somebody doesn't want to talk to you, don't take it personally, just ask if there's somebody else who will talk to you. And I would be asking this person if they would recommend this workplace to a close friend of theirs who wanted to start working. This will be a far more informative question than just asking the person, hey, what's this place to work at? What's this workplace like to work at? If they would be willing to recommend it to a loved one, then that's probably a good sign. I also suggest asking them if this is the first place they have worked at and how long they have been there. If the answer is yes, it is the first place and they've been there for a long time, meaning 6 months or longer, then this is probably a good sign. It means that they're probably making enough money, being treated well enough to not bother looking elsewhere. That could also not be the case, however, it's just a possible indicator. You're not going to get all the information from speaking to a couple of people. Ultimately, you're actually going to have to try that place out over an elongated period of time. A brothel or agency who has really high turnover though and who can't keep any long-term workers probably means that they don't take care of their workers, or rather, and more likely the case, means that they aren't very busy. People in the sex industry tend to tolerate poor treatment for far longer than they do low income. So if they're working somewhere but they're making enough money, even if management isn't great, they will stay working there because they earn a lot. Whereas if they go somewhere and they're treated really well but they're actually not making anything, they're far more likely to go elsewhere because obviously money talks. When you meet these people in person, you also want to be aware of and assess how they treat you. The second brothel I went to investigate in Melbourne left me sitting alone in a room for 20 minutes and then proceeded to conduct an interview with me practically in the doorway of the brothel. Now, this wasn't exactly a stellar representation of how they took care of their girls. I got really lucky with the last brothel I looked at. The wife of the owner just happened to be there that day, so she took me around to every room herself personally, and then left me to speak with the hostess on shift at the end. Now, the hostess is the person at reception who brings clients inside and manages the workers on shift. This hostess sat with me in a private room and answered every question I have, which, as you'll see in a moment, was not a short list. The first brothel I went to treated me equally as well, and I would have been happy to work there. However, it was far smaller, not as nice, and also paid less. If I hadn't have pushed through with my investigation, I could have ended up spending years there rather than at the place I did end up working, which again brings me back to my point. Don't just settle at the first stop, do your due diligence. And lastly, don't be alarmed when the staff on shift asked if you want to start now. Almost all brothels and agencies want new girls and are in need of new staff all the time. This is just standard industry behavior. Everybody wants what they want and they want it now. So don't worry about it and do not start until you're ready. Don't ever let anyone in this industry make you feel like doing something that you don't want to do. 4, questions you should ask. Okay, now that you've hunted down some top options, spoken with them on the phone, and visited them in person, you want to ask informative questions which are actually going to help you make your choice. This first list is exactly what I would be asking all brothels and most agencies. And the second list we're going to go through is relevant only to agencies or to brothels who offer an escort service where you actually go off premises to meet a client. What safety check-in and check-out procedures do you have? Most brothels have a panic button in the room, as well as a phone in the room which you use to call down to reception on entry to the room and then when you leave with your client. Most agencies have a phone call or text check-in and check-out system where you let them know when you're with your client and then you also let them know when you have left. Some, but not all, have drivers who escort you to and from your jobs. You should also ask what procedure they have in place if something goes wrong. It's an unfortunate reality that most agencies and brothels will rarely get police involved even when it's needed. If you're working someplace, especially where laws are not exactly friendly for sex work, then you can almost be sure that police will not be called even if you're in trouble. So you need to know what they are willing to do should something really bad happen. What is the process for meeting/introing clients? This will be of particular importance if you're working at a brothel and you're very concerned about your privacy. In most brothels, clients are brought into a room by the host and are sat in there as each worker comes into the room one by one and spends just a couple of minutes introducing themselves and chatting with the client. Then the host comes back into the room, the client makes their pick, the host announces it to the workers, and the girl who gets picked takes her client into a bedroom to spend their chosen amount of time together. This process of meeting and chatting is called an intro. It generally only lasts a few minutes, so you really don't have long to make an impression on your client. Some places have an open intro area. This is where all the workers and all the clients are milling about, but essentially the same thing happens. Each worker goes up one at a time to the client, and the client then makes their choice. What things do I need to bring of my own, and what is the dress code? In most brothels, it's a legal requirement that condoms and lube are supplied. At most agencies, you will need to bring your own. Each workplace may have its own dress code requirements for being on shift or for going to meet with a client, so ask in advance what most girls wear for meeting clients. Exactly how do I operate a booking from start to finish? This is a question that I didn't ask when I first started out, and I wish I had asked before my first ever shift. I didn't, and I had no idea what I was doing before I went into my first ever booking. If the host you're speaking to doesn't do a helpful job of this, which they might not because they're not the ones actually meeting the clients alone, then if you're in a brothel, ask the first other sex worker you meet to break down for you step by step what to do once you're alone with your client in the room. Generally, you need to lay sheets and towels out a certain way. You need to do a visual health check on your client. You both need to shower and mouthwash. You will discuss what type of service the client wants, and you'll get extra payment for particular things in advance. And lastly, you want some tips on how to actually start the physical side of the booking. It might seem obvious, but once you're alone with your client for the first time ever, it probably won't be. And if you're really unlucky like I was, your client will be even more nervous than you and also won't know what the hell to do. My first ever client was a 50-year-old man who had never been in a brothel before, and he was more nervous to touch me than I was to touch him. I was really hoping my inner hoe would just come out and magically know what to do, but she didn't. Eventually she did, and she served me well for all these years, but that day she really let me down. So if you're lucky, you will get a client who is confident and experienced and who takes charge. But if you don't, then I recommend letting your client shower first, then having a brief shower yourself before offering him a naked massage. Start with him lying on his stomach. Then you want to turn him over and start kissing him before you give him a blowjob. Most men will naturally take charge once they're hard. Even the virgins know what their dicks are made to do once they're erect, and your job becomes much easier. So the secret is in knowing how to warm them up, relax them, and turn them on. Okay, how do the rates work? What can I/should I/does everyone else charge extra for? Most brothels operate on a standard and deluxe service system. Standard service is the basic sexual offering, which is generally what everybody needs to offer. Then deluxe is whatever extras you are prepared to offer above that, which are legal. Some places allow you to set your own prices, and other places have a fixed rate. Some agencies just have a set fee based on your time. There will be a percentage split between you and the house. For some brothels, it's 60% to them and 40% to you. Some places also split your tips, other places let you keep them. And most agencies I've worked with tend to do a 50-50 split, but it varies from place to place, so you need to find that out. What are the busiest/slowest times to work? You may need to trial this for yourself. However, at most brothels, their busiest times will be a Thursday to a Saturday night. A shift can be more or less profitable though, based on how many other girls are working. So if you're on shift with 20 other girls, even if it is a busy night, that is a lot of bodies to compete with. You may actually do better working a Sunday morning when no one wants to work, so there are no other people working to compete with, yet there still are a steady flow of clients. How often am I required to be tested? You will need to provide your workplace with proof of a sexual health test, so ask them how often that is. You actually want to work somewhere that enforces this. Safe sex work is ideal for everyone, most of all for you. And clean clients are happy clients who come back to spend their money, hopefully on you. So make sure you find out what their policy is on that. What are the shift requirements? While sex work is generally relatively flexible, many workplaces still have shift duration and frequency requirements, and some really strictly enforce them. This is because brothels and agencies deal with a lot of flaky and unreliable workers, so they become really intolerant to people who don't fulfill their shift requirements. So know in advance what's going to be expected of you. I used to work somewhere that actually wouldn't physically let their workers leave before their shift was up, so find out what their policy is on this as well. Now, more specifically for an agency, this is what you want to be asking them as well as the previous questions we just covered. Where do the bookings take place? Will I be traveling to private homes? Find out if this agency only sends you to hotels or if they also send you to private homes. If they do, ask where these homes are usually located. Are they in a city or far out suburbs? If they are sending you to far out locations, then the next question about this is how they screen their clients, and it's even more important. Do they ask for photo ID when you go to a private home? Ideally, the answer should be yes. In reality, at least in Australia, the screening process for clients isn't particularly advanced. If they're taking deposits to secure your bookings, then they'll probably be getting credit card details, which technically should be the client's personal details as well. How many jobs per shift occur on average? The difficult thing about an agency is you have no idea how busy that agency actually is, and this is why I really didn't like working for agencies. Some agencies will have all their girls who are on shift sitting at an office together going out to jobs. This is kind of better in that you get to see firsthand how many bookings there are, as well as you get a feel for how they book who goes to what bookings. So if the same girls get picked all the time, you know that there's probably some kind of favoritism or hierarchical system going on, which isn't great if you're not the it girl of the month. If you go to and from jobs from home, you'll literally have no clue and no way of knowing how much business your agency is getting and what is really going on. I worked for an agency once who claimed to be the premium of high-end agencies with only high-end, high-priced clientele. However, the issue was I didn't get one job for 3 weeks. They also didn't want me to work anywhere else. They kept saying it was just a quiet time, but I really had no clue what was going on. I only had the voice of an operator who was on shift that day on the other end of the phone, and I had no way of knowing if what they were telling me was even true. I didn't even know any of the other girls to ask them what their experience was. So they might have been busy, but only sending out their favorite or longest working girls, or they could have been totally dead with no work at all. In hindsight, I wish I had asked ahead of time how much work I could expect to get, although even if I had I would have had to try to find it out anyway. Lastly, ask them about how they pick who gets each booking. Do they distribute the jobs out evenly between the girls on shift? How many girls are on shift at once? Do the clients request a particular type of girl? Do they get to see photos of any kind? Find out more about who gets what to see if they seem like they have a fair process. Is it just the first girl who accepts a job? If you're sitting at home waiting for your phone to ring, then it's going to be important in this scenario that you know this and that you can make sure you're always available to answer the call so that you don't miss those jobs before they're passed to other girls. 5. And lastly, don't ignore your intuition, but stay flexible. If this is the first time you'll be working in the sex industry, it's going to feel like a whole new world, because it is. Listen to your gut. If something doesn't feel right, then be cautious and ask for more information. But also know that at first, everything is going to feel foreign to you. So it's important that you stay flexible and adaptive and give yourself the opportunity to get to learn and feel comfortable with this new kind of work. Sex work is not a corporate job. There's no training or induction process. You won't have someone holding your hand easing into things. It's going to feel like you've been thrown in the deep end, so it's up to you whether you sink or swim. Try to give each place you work at least 2 to 3 shifts before you call it quits, because first impressions aren't always accurate. You might happen to work on a really dead shift and not get any work, but then the next one could be really busy. 3 shifts, even at varying times and days, will be a better indication than just one. I think this applies to all workplaces, however, I'll say it here. You're here to do a job and to make money. You will do that more effectively when you stay out of politics and drama with other people, especially in a female-dominant environment where everyone is basically working on a commission-only salary. Things get bitchy and the sex industry tends to attract some quirky folk, so don't worry about them. Focus on your clients and on making money. And lastly, I'll sum this up again by saying, try working at multiple places. Actually do shifts at different places and see what suits you best. At first, all the places you work at will tell you that you're not allowed to work anywhere else. If you just trial a few shifts at a few places, that's really unlikely to do much harm. So just try a few and then pick the place that you like most. There you have it. If you're at the very start of your time in the industry and looking at taking your first steps, these steps here are the best things I can recommend for making that process as smooth as possible. It may seem daunting. I know that it was for me back when I was 18. I was really nervous and scared and excited all at once. I still remember so clearly what this whole process felt like for me. I remember the first brothel I ever set foot in, my first shift, and my first client. Sex work has been the most rewarding and fulfilling job I've ever done, and it's given me so much to be thankful for in my life, as well as so many experiences that have been incredible along the way. All the discomfort I felt at the start was totally worth it in the end. So I hope this helps. Give it a go, and as always, your feedback is welcome and appreciated. If you're an escort living in Sydney, Australia, and you want even more support and guidance on how you can be a successful escort, then I invite you to go to foxgirls.com.au and apply to get in touch with me there. Jump on a call with me to find out how you can get access to individualized one-on-one mentoring, where I personally take you through the same methods I use to become a successful high-class escort.